All right, Hoosier Nation. Look, there's been some good news in this offseason, right? Indiana was able to land Peyton Sparks. Indiana was able to land Kalel Ware. But as we talked about last week on this podcast, which did huge numbers, by the way, thanks to all of you for listening, Indiana had kind of a bummer period for the last couple of weeks, for the last 3 weeks, maybe. Well, the Hoosiers got good news earlier on this Wednesday afternoon as their longtime point guard, who's going to enter his third season now at Indiana. Xavier Johnson got his medical waiver approved. Matt and I will dive into how that impacts Indiana, how it maybe affects the Hoosiers' pursuits in the portal now with 3 spots open. And hey, Indiana football's got a big NFL draft weekend coming up. We're going to dive into all of that and so much more here on episode 296 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Wednesday, April 26th, 2023, where I'm your host, Nithin Krishnan. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, Indiana has their starting point guard next season. The floor is yours. How big is this news for IU as the Hoosiers do get Xavier Johnson back for next season?
Well, I mean, it was the one thing that had to happen for the rest of the offseason to kind of move along, right?
Mm-hmm.
Indiana's been sitting here waiting for the answer to this question. And to be honest, it kind of sucks that it came now off the back of last week losing your top 2 transfer portal targets to Tennessee. Because I have a sneaky suspicion if Xavier Johnson's transfer, Xavier Johnson's waiver would have been approved this time last week, it probably would have given those 2 recruits something a little bit more to think about. But given that he's not on the roster and there was no guarantees and these roster spots are going really fast, these guys kind of had to commit when they had to commit and when they felt like it was right. And so now IU sitting here with the second best, third best point guard in the Big Ten, maybe even the best point guard in your opinion, right? That's you're entitled to your opinion. In the Big Ten, you have a former top 10 recruit unicorn at center. You've got Trey Galloway on the roster. You've got a former high 4-star Malik Renew coming back for a sophomore year. You've got Gabe Cupps and Ja'Kai Newton, and you've got some other 4-star guys on, with Caleb Banks, etc., on the roster already. There is a what am I looking for? A foundation,
right?
That has now been laid.
A core.
There's a core. Yeah, you have your some people would argue your 2 most important positions kind of filled out. You have your center position and you have your point guard, right? You have not only just do you have your point guard, you have your point guards and you have your centers, right? So you have not only that those 2 positions filled out or are filled in for the starting lineup, but they're filled out for almost the entire roster. Now you can go get 2 wing players. I'm talking like maybe go get a combo guard for the 2 guard spot, and then go get a wing that can shoot. Then kind of wash your hands with it and be done and move on. Like I said before on the podcast, I believe the information that I have that IU is going to bank one of the scholarships. So yes, IU still has 3 spots open on the roster, even with Xavier Johnson coming back, but IU will not use those 3 slots. Instead, they will only use 2. So who are the next 2? Where are they going to come from?
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out on this podcast, or we'll do a little bit of a thought exercise in this podcast about it. But overall, IU was going to be absolutely screwed if they didn't have Xavier Johnson. They were going to be on the back foot. They were going to have to do some panic mode transfer portaling. They're still going to be in, sort of panic mode as a lot of the options have left the portal, right, and gone to other places. But now, with a solid foundation, IU can kind of go out there and pitch to people an actual roster with Xavier Johnson in it, without them being like, is that going to actually happen or not? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. he
It's
will be
certain.
back in a
Locked
Hoosier
in.
uniform. He will be 100% and ready to go by the time the season starts.
Yes.
This is all good news.
Sign me up for that. That's music to my ears. Can I pitch you a conspiracy theory here in the first 5 minutes?
I love conspiracy theories.
Neither Chris Ledlum nor Dalton Connect have signed. I'm just gonna leave it there. All right.
That is a conspiracy theory.
Neither of them have signed. You go to Tennessee's basketball site. There's no official statement. You go and you look. No, unless I'm missing something, they haven't signed. And if for those of you with a keen eye for Indiana basketball, remember a couple years ago, Mike Woodson took Michael Durr, who had committed to Virginia Tech, I believe, in the portal.
Yeah.
Committed to Virginia Tech after putting his name in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, look, we need someone to stop Zach Edey twice a year. Well, that was enough to convince Michael Durr. So look, again, as I had said in the initially, conspiracy theory, all right? Probably nothing to it. Probably.
Most likely.
Look, hey, look, if there's one thing Indiana fans like to latch onto, it's a little funny business. I don't know. It didn't take Kel'el Ware this long to sign. That's all I'm saying. On Twitter, if you looked at Xavier Johnson earlier today, he had kind of thrown out a little tease late this morning, saying, hey, God is good. And Anthony Leal actually jumped on that quickly and said, hey, for all of you Indiana fans looking for some good news, you might hear something soon, before Leal deleted that tweet. Interestingly, for X, though, a couple hours later, he actually formally sent out the bat signal that he is back with the 30-second or so hype video of him wearing that cream and crimson with the banging soundtrack in the background. Xavier Johnson being back is huge for IU. 12 points a game in his Indiana career, 5 assists per game in his Indiana career. This is something that caught me by surprise in building up to this podcast. Matt and I were talking about it. He's a 38% three-point shooter across his Indiana career. If you don't think that's going to help this team instantly from opening night, you're out of your mind, okay? And I don't care if those of you look at the field goal percentage and say, oh, he might go 2 for 15. Shut up, okay? Look, this is a guy who, as Matt said, will be a top 3 point guard in the Big Ten as far as when the season starts. And the thing is, with someone like Xavier Johnson, he brings so much to the table. You can see how much his teammates love him. Miller Kopp tweeted him congratulations. Anthony Leal had congratulations. Trace Jackson Davis congratulated him. The assistants, Brian Walsh, Kenya Hunter, Yasir Roseman said, Binky's back. If you don't think this guy means a lot to this program, you are crazy. The image is locked into my mind. As if those of you don't know, maybe you're new to this podcast, we have access to Indiana basketball games to go in person wherever Indiana plays. Charlie Mason is our boots on the ground guy in Bloomington. We usually share the responsibilities when the Hoosiers are on the road. I was in Albany for the NCAA tournament. In the tunnel at freaking 10:15 p.m. as Indiana's ready to play Kent State, it is Xavier Johnson who is leading the pregame huddle as the Hoosiers are ready to go out onto the court to face Kent State in that first round. It is him who is leading. It is Xavier Johnson who is leading the Hoosiers emotionally, energetically, and finally now we'll see him actually dribble the basketball on the court in a competitive game, score, assist, you name it. Matt, we know there's so many things Xavier Johnson can do on the court, from the three-point shooting to the defense to the distribution to the leadership. What do you think is the one aspect of his game next year that Indiana will covet the most as the Hoosiers try to record another top 4 season in the Big Ten?
His playmaking, and his passing. Something IU desperately missed when he was gone last year. The team was a way better passing team.
Yeah.
Late on in the season, and that was without the best passer on the team.
Well, right? You had the best passing big in the country. That helped.
Yeah, no, he developed that as the season went on. Like, Trace was not that passer when X was in the lineup. If he was, remember, X shoots 38% from 3.
Crazy.
That's what I'm saying. Like last year's team would have been a team that could have made a run to the Final Four if they had been healthy. People just forget how good Xavier Johnson is. They really do. They only remember his games where he goes 1 of 14 and Indiana loses
Ridiculous.
by 20 when he's not the problem. Okay. Him missing shots sucks, but he is not the problem. Usually, what happens is he ends up being the guy that has to take a shot because no one else is willing to take a shot in those games. Right. And that is why I want IU to go out and get some shot making guards and some shot making wings to surround him with, because he's a primary ball handler and he's a primary distributor. He is not a shot making, shot creating guard. That's not his game. And he can do a little bit of it. That's what makes him an elite point guard. That's why he could possibly be the best point guard in the Big Ten next year and one of the best point guards in the country because he can do so many different things in the basketball court.
Yeah.
He's not like a Steph Curry. He's not going to go out there and look for his own shot as a point guard. He's out there to set up and run plays and create for others. That's why it's awesome that you get somebody like a Kalaware, right? Who can, spot up, shoot, and pick and pop and pick and roll and do all that fun stuff. And you have, X's speed and his versatility. And then you go and get maybe 2 more wings that can shoot. And you add in a really good passing big man and Renew and rebounder and just grinder. Like I love that team. I think that's a fun team, and it's one of the more balanced IU teams that the Hoosiers have had in quite some time. And that would be a welcome change because I feel like, for instance, since this podcast has existed since 2017,
18, yeah, 17, I think, yeah.
It's been a one-man show for IU teams, right? It's been Juwan Morgan's really good. You have a banged up Romeo Langford that comes in, and that team's a disaster. Then you have Trace.
Yeah.
It's a one-man show with Trace. It'll be nice to have a 3 or 4-man
approach,
show.
right? Attack.
And there's no disrespect to Jalen Hood-Schifino last year, right? But that was supposed to be a 3-headed monster with Xavier Johnson and Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trace. And then it was a duo with one of them being a freshman who, by the way, had one of the best performances I've ever seen from a freshman at Purdue and had all these other things, but it cost IU in March, right? Straight up, it did. Against that Miami team, Jalen just did not have his best game. And that's a game where you would have desperately needed somebody like Xavier Johnson to be playing, right? To give IU a chance and give IU a shot in that game. And then Miami ends up going on to the Final Four, right?
Crazy.
So it would be nice to have a team that's kind of filled out correctly. Now, whether that's, a Devoe Davis, right, is a name that could be thrown out there. We're talking about in a bit. It could be a Trey White from USC, or could be RJ. No, is it RJ
Luis? RJ Luis out of UMass? Is that who you're talking about?
RJ Luis out of UMass, or Ray J.
Dennis.
Ray J. Dennis from Toledo. Whoever it is that IU brings in to be that third guy on the roster, Ware, Johnson, insert transfer, 3-headed Hydra, right? Whoever they bring in, that better be a little bit feathery.
That's right. Yeah, we're looking for Indiana to add a couple of key pieces to their team. The quality I'm looking forward to seeing Xavier Johnson bring to the table most this upcoming season is his leadership. I mean, Indiana's going to need that so much, especially with Trace moving on. And by the way, Race Thompson moving on. 2 guys who meant so much to this program from an off-the-court standpoint. Xavier Johnson's been through a lot in his college basketball career, and he's been through a lot of different types of seasons. He's been through a lot of different types of environments. ACC, Big Ten, very different. Losing seasons, winning seasons, very different. He knows what it's like being a youngster with a lot on his plate. He knows what it's like being an experienced player who is not the star of the show. Right? And so there are a lot of different qualities that Xavier Johnson, a lot of experiences that he's gone through that I think he'll really help. We know how important his on the court leadership will be. That toughness, that edge in Big Ten play. It's going to be so critical, especially in a league where once again, it feels like a lot of games are going to be decided by 2 or 3 or 4 points once again. And now I'm also thinking, hey, who's Indiana's incoming recruiting class this season? What are the two guards? Wow. Maybe it's nice to have Xavier Johnson in the locker room for a full season, showing the ropes to Gabe Cupps especially. And then also Ja'Kai Noon, who, again, Ja'Kai Noon plays a different type of position, but I'm sure there's a thing or two Johnson can teach the youngsters about how college basketball is in order to be successful like Johnson has been through his seasons. I'm really looking forward to a leadership piece. I think it's going to be huge for the Hoosiers to have X as almost like a player coach, right? Helping the team out, adjusting as the game goes on. We talked about his pregame hype man abilities as well. So lots to discuss there. Xavier Johnson back at Indiana. So much more to talk about here. We're going to dive a little bit more into IU's approach in the portal. Maybe give you a hypothetical starting lineup or two. What are we thinking? Do the Hoosiers have 5 starters right now on their roster? We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And actually, we're going to talk about a little breaking news for the IU football program in this segment. There's a member of the national championship game TCU Horned Frogs football team who put his name in the transfer portal last week, and the Hoosiers just picked up a commitment. And great news, if you ask me from an IU football standpoint, is that he freaking plays on the offensive line.
Yeah.
The name is Noah Boltikoff, who was a 3-star high school recruit in the class of 2021. He just committed to Indiana after putting his name in the portal out of TCU. That's going to be a huge addition to the offensive line. I know offensive line coach Bob Bostad will really like to have him. 6'5", 265 as far as the height and weight measurements there. Couple years of eligibility left for Boltikoff. So whether it's Dexter Williams at quarterback or Taven Jackson at quarterback, Indiana is going to have a rather strongly coveted high school recruit who went to TCU, won a crap ton of games at TCU, made a national title game at TCU. Now, with a couple years left, he's going to wear the cream and crimson for the Indiana Hoosiers. Really exciting news to see Noah Boltikoff join the IU football program again. He hasn't signed; he's just committed, but it's still exciting to see the native from Rose Hill, Kansas, join the Indiana Hoosiers football program. I think it was interesting to see that he held Kansas State and Vanderbilt offers as well during his high school recruitment. So he knows a thing or two about playing Power 5 football. Looking forward to seeing him dress for IU. We don't know. Maybe he will be in the mix as far as a starting offensive lineman is concerned going into this upcoming season as the Hoosiers lose Luke Haggard. Folks, a reminder, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for The Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at The Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans, such as yourself. So, Matt, Indiana's got 3 scholarship spots to fill. I think both of us are in conjunction here as far as the kinds of player Indiana needs to go after, right? It's going to be, hey, let's get some length in the backcourt. Let's add a shooting guard, a small forward, those types of players. If you ask me, I'm honestly going to go so far as to say that should be the priority only going forward. Like, I think Indiana has enough in their front court when you look at Malik Renew and you look at Kalel Ware and you look at Peyton Sparks. I think Indiana's got their ball handling, distributing guard hand. Like Xavier Johnson and I think Gabe Cupps in a complementary role can do that job. That might be a little too much to put on their plate, but if you ask me, I think the positions for Indiana to focus on right now are shooting guard and small forward. Am I crazy?
Yeah, I mean, positionless basketball is more of a thing that Woodson runs, but if you're a position guy, which I think it's like a 50-50 split, honestly, amongst basketball fans, but basically, your 2 off-ball wing roles.
Yes, please.
Yes, IU needs two of those guys because I don't think they have one on the roster.
I don't think they do either.
Um,
Taylor
I
Banks,
like
like,
Banks is not one, not yet at least. He will be at some point, but he's not quite ready to play yet. You know, are significant minutes. He's ready to play, but not significant minutes. Chikai Newton's a combo. So is Trey Galloway. Trey Galloway is about as combo as a combo guard can get.
sure.
So you don't have a guy on the roster that just purely runs off screens and sits in the corner and runs baseline to baseline, and when he gets the ball looks for a shot, right? Like that's, I mean, a CJ Gunn maybe. CJ Gunn. I think CJ Gunn's probably the only guy on the roster from a guard perspective that can do that. And you'd be thrusting a sophomore that barely played last year and shot, was it 5% from three?
Yeah, you're not kidding. It's 2 for
Uh,
24.
yeah, 5% from three into
Sorry,
that
8%.
role. 8% from three. Yeah, sorry, my bad. My bad. I'm not, look, that's not dissing the kid. I'm not dissing him for shot 8 because a lot of those times it was just him putting up a shot
I'm really
like
looking
garbage
forward
time.
to CJ Gunn. I
Yeah,
can't
and I think
understand
he's going to be
that.
fantastic. I
Yeah.
just think thrusting him into the starting two guard spot it's early. It's early on his career to do that. I think he'll play significant minutes this year for IU. I think he's going to be a fantastic role player off the bench. And then if you want to do that to him is next year, by all means, like go ahead. But I think he'll be a fantastic 4-year player for IU. Just that right now he's not ready to start. So go and get somebody that can do that. I said, and Ant and I were talking about this on the podcast we're doing for Big Ten Coast to Coast today.
Yep.
I said I wouldn't mind them going and actually getting another combo guard, maybe somebody that has a little bit of point guard experience, but is a larger off-ball guy. You know, there's not a ton of them in the portal. But
well, and I think the key thing there is, there are not that many available in the portal, but you also don't need to land a former 5-star recruit. You know what I'm saying?
No. So what I was saying is that somebody like it's Raekwon Battle. He just committed to West Virginia, right? He's a guy I would have loved IU to go and look at, right? Absolute bucket, playoff, can play off ball. He's 6'5", every bit of 6'5", 190, but he can also handle the ball a little bit, right? That's a guy I would have looked at because again, Xavier Johnson has had this thing where he's had nagging injuries his entire career, right? And I would hate for IU to go another season where their backup point guard is Trey Galloway, because that's not who Trey Galloway is, right? That's not who Trey Galloway is. Trey Galloway is a 2/3 that can do that, but is also a spot up shooter and a high energy guy.
Right.
But you don't want him having primary ball handling duties. He's an elite secondary ball handler from the wing position. As far as a playmaking perspective goes and taking care of the ball and moving the ball to the right place, he's very, very good at that. But it takes away from his gifts if he has to be the initiator of the offense. Exactly. And so then that would be a lot of weight to put on Gabe Cup's shoulders if Xavier Johnson gets injured, or a ton of weight to put on Xavier Johnson's shoulders if Gabe Cup's is injured. So I would always like to see Indiana having 3 guys on the roster that from the guard position can play point guard. Or you have 2 true point guards and 2 true combos. I know we have Chikai Newton, but again, he's also a freshman, right? So that's a ton of responsibility to be thrust upon him. By the way, I saw it, in the Rivals rankings, I think Chikai Newton was like 69th.
Ooh.
So nice.
There you go.
Good for him.
Very nice.
Nice. So I would like to go see them get a combo guard and then go get an off-ball guy 3. I think Devoe Davis is a guy, again, I'll mention his name again, from Arkansas. He is currently in the draft. However, My intel tells me that when he gets out, if he decides to come back from the draft, given how crowded Arkansas's backcourt has become, you've gone and seen they've gotten like 1 billion transfers. They have a decent freshman class coming in as well. He might look to transfer. If he does, IU is among the favorites for him, mostly because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, him and Xavier Johnson are boys.
I'm not sure about the connection, but it's definitely possible. I just don't remember seeing anything.
They're familiar with each other.
Okay.
They're familiar with each other for some reason, because I had a tip that Xavier Johnson wants that to happen. Basically, that's what he's asked for him to play and be his backcourt mate. So that would be awesome. I think the USC transfer White is another guy I would like to look for. Trey White at the 3. He's got a freshman last year, averaged about 9 points per game. Is a pure 3, pure small forward. Can play off ball, doesn't need the ball at all. And is a decent shooter. So that's a guy I wouldn't mind IU going and prioritizing. But if I'm going to be honest with y'all, it has been zip tight from an IU perspective. It was really loud for a while. I was getting updates all the time from all these random people that usually give me updates. But it has been all as quiet on the Western Front.
The moles in Bloomington, right? Moles in Bloomington. You gotta have them planted.
Exactly. Last name I'll bring up here. Last name I'll bring up is Ray J. Davis.
Dennis.
Oh yeah, RJ.
Dennis.
Yeah,
Ray J. Dennis. Ray J. Dennis. Yeah.
Wow, RJ. I combined RJ Davis and
Ray J.
Yeah, sure. Ray J. Dennis. Yeah. So Ray J. Dennis. He just put his name in the portal. He's from Toledo. He's the MAC Player of the Year. He's
just an absolute one of the best players. One of the best players in the country.
Not even just like high majors, like one of the best players in the country, regardless of where he played. He's instantly like a top 3 guy, in my opinion, in
right
portal.
Away.
Yes, he's a point guard, but he can also do some off-ball stuff. Yes, he's 6 foot. I don't care. I want IU to get like I would be fine.
6'2". I mean, not even 6 foot, like 6'2".
Yeah. So it's fine. It's fine. They would figure out a way to play both those guys on the court together. I personally, I like 2 point guard systems. So I would I would love that for IU. It is the worst kept secret in the world that he's a heavy Illinois lean, given that I believe he's from Illinois.
Yes.
And the Illini staff have been doing some
perfectly legal communications.
Yes, perfectly legal communications. And there's a solid offer on the table for him to go to Illinois. I wouldn't mind IU trying to outbid them.
Let's go.
That would be awesome. I don't have any information on whether they would do that or not, but I would definitely, if you're a Hoosier fan, be on the lookout for that. Also hope that he doesn't go to Illinois.
That's what I'm saying.
Illinois has been a point guard away from being decent since
IO,
which is not that long ago, but either way, they've been a point guard away. And if he decides to go to Illinois,
just go to the NBA, because he did put his name in the NBA draft waters too. Just go to the league, man. Just go to the league.
If he decides to go to Illinois and they get RJ Shannon back,
Tyron Shannon, TJ Shannon,
RJ Shannon. Where is RJ?
Where is that? Who's RJ? That rings a bell too. Is he like a Michigan State? I feel like Michigan State, maybe like a Michigan State player. I'm looking this up. I think RJ Shannon is a guy. He's a guy from something. No, he looks like he's a lawyer. Never mind. I take that back.
I'm making up names now. Either way, I look. I once had a comment under the podcast on YouTube that said Matt says some wild things sometimes.
It's true.
Sometimes my brain takes A and B and makes C.
That's a compliment. Sometimes that's much.
Sometimes I say some wild stuff. This is one of those times. I apologize. Either way.
Yeah.
Shannon if Shannon decides to come back
Yeah.
for Illinois,
Yeah, Ray J and
Terrence decides to come back, and they get Ray J in,
yeah.
they're gonna be scary.
Well, yeah, and you think someone like
Instantly.
Meyer comes back possibly.
I don't.
Uh,
Can he?
can he? All right, maybe I should be talking out of my rear end here. All right, so yeah, Illinois obviously a legitimate threat for Ray J Dennis. All I'm saying is, for those of you who want to watch some college basketball from last season because you're getting that hankering right now after a few weeks, go watch Toledo and Kent State in the MAC championship game.
That was one of the best games of the year.
Insane,
Not a lot of
insane
people
basketball.
watched.
I think it was an NBA arena in Cleveland. Just an amazing game. For me personally, as I look at the different twos or the threes available that Indiana can slot in, Tanner Holden is an interesting name. He just put his name in the portal out of Ohio State. I'm always a fan of maybe snagging a little conference transfer, maybe get some intel on the Buckeyes here. He should be better this upcoming season than they were last year. See what he can say about Chris Holtman, the reverse Joey Brunk, so to say. I think Holden is someone who at Wright State was a very impressive player. Last year at Ohio State just couldn't crack the rotation. One thing led to another. He put his name in the portal. I like Evan Mahaffey out of Penn State a lot. Again, when I talk about these 2 or 3 position type players out on the wing, I'm not looking for someone who's a 5-star. Like Harrison Ingram was a huge name, right? And again, if Indiana wanted to go after him, that would have been fine. I wouldn't have any issue with Harrison Ingram, a Stanford player who ended up going to North Carolina. All fine to me. What I'm saying is, I don't need Indiana to go after someone with a high school plaudits like Kalel Ware, right? I don't need Indiana to go after the future NBA draft prospect. I just need Indiana to go after someone who can come in, fit into the system, play effective basketball for the Hoosiers, put IU in a good spot next season, someone who can switch on the perimeter. That's something I'm looking forward to seeing. Again, it doesn't have to be someone who lit it up wherever he played. I love Robert Jennings out of Texas Tech. I like Anthony Selden out of Gardner Webb. Again, I'm not looking for guys who are superstar players necessarily. I will say, though, your comment about Ray J. Dennis set something off in my mind. I know IU fans want the Hoosiers to fill up all 3 roster spots ASAP with superstar players. Someone like Ray J. Dennis, okay, just put his name in the portal. And if he had put his name in the portal 3 weeks ago, he would have been one of the top 3 guys. So like right now, he's still one of the top 3 guys. But a lot of schools have gone out and they filled up their allocation already, right? You've seen Tennessee go out, land a couple of guys. Arkansas has gone out, landed a few guys. Missouri, Tamar Bates went there. They added a couple others as well. West Virginia has made a big splash a few times here in the portal season. I just wonder if after landing Ware and Sparks, I'm just throwing out a hypothesis here, maybe Indiana's saying, look, let's have some other teams who are very active in the portal. Let them fill up their rosters. Yep. Now, at this point in the portal, maybe let's make our move. They're like, instead of 20 teams going after Ray J. Dennis, it'll be like 5. And I don't know. It's just a hypothesis to me, Matt, but it might help Indiana here to have less competition, maybe for not the tier 1A plus transfers available, but for the players who are out there that can come in and still play 20 to 25 minutes a game for Indiana.
Yeah, I was trying to explain this to people yesterday because they were like, what do you mean that IU still in a good position for transfers? Well, all the heavy hitters in the transfer portal, for the most part, are filled up.
That's what I'm thinking.
Tennessee was a team that just decided to steal IU's scouting reports and go after everybody IU was going after. Well, they don't got any roster spots left. There's nobody left. Like, of course, they can over recruit or whatever, and you can't really account for that. But for the most part, their roster is set. Same thing with Arkansas, right?
Like Villanova, right?
West Virginia, Villanova. And again, I still feel like there are major dominoes left to fall because the whole college basketball as a whole is waiting for Hunter Dickinson to transfer.
Yeah.
Right? The biggest domino has yet to fall for the entire college basketball season offseason. If he goes to Kansas, right, then a lot of Big 12 teams are sitting there looking at each other like,
shoot, we need bigs.
We need bigs. Then there's bigs transferring in, and then there's teams that are not getting bigs. So then there are players transferring out because they don't want to play Kansas right next year with
Dickinson in the mix,
Dickinson in the mix, and then there's big high level Big 12 transfers in the portal, and then those players go somewhere, and then those players kick other players out. Then there are also in the portal, right? Like there is so much still yet to happen because the biggest mover of the portal hasn't even been committed yet.
No,
now I do have some insider info on Hunter.
Ooh.
He loved his Kentucky visit, which would be disgusting.
Remember, Indiana doesn't play Kentucky. They do. Indiana plays Kansas.
I would hate it personally. I would despise it, in fact, if he went to Kentucky. That would be disgusting to me. He is taking Villanova visit this weekend. Personally, from a basketball perspective, unbiased, I think Villanova and Kansas are his two best options. For him, I think him and who's Kansas's point guard whose name is currently slipping my mind, but I was just talking about him earlier.
DeJuan, so good. DeJuan Harris.
Yeah, I think him and DeJuan Harris would be an awesome duo. He
was so good last season.
Awesome duo. By the way, I didn't mention the Vanderbilt transfer or Matthew Cleveland on this podcast as far as players.
Ty Wilkin? No, give me a second. No. Keep going. I got you.
Yeah. Whose name you guys are screaming at the screen right now? Look, there's a lot of names here. I got to remember up here. Mostly because I have heard that IU is not involved heavily with either of them, even though there was reports that IU reached out to both of them.
Tyron
Lawrence, yes. IU's not involved with either of them. I would love Tyron Lawrence on IU. He's so good. He was a very good player in the SEC, and he played at Vandy.
Yes.
Okay. If he played at IU, he would be beloved by the fan base because he's one of those guys that's super efficient, knows what his role is, and is an excellent 3-point shooter. Like they would love him, and he tries on defense. IU fans would love him, but he is gonna go and play for it's hard to say bigger team than Indiana. His goals are set on winning a national championship. And while IU's goals are also set on winning a national championship, there are better rosters for him to go and join right now to position him in that. So that's why I've heard from him. Cleveland from Florida State, I have heard he's looking more East Coast. So I don't think Indiana is really going to be in the mix, given that they're in the Midwest, and I've heard that he's out on Michigan as well for that reason. So that's probably something you don't got to worry about. So I would take both of those names if you're an IU fan and just kind of throw them out. They're not coming to IU. That's not going to happen. IU didn't miss on those guys. They weren't even considering IU in the first place. Okay.
No. But again, in some of these cases, it doesn't hurt to make the call, right? You
always have to reach out to these people, but that doesn't mean that IU misses on them because they reached out to somebody, because everybody has different interests, right? Like, for instance, Hunter loved Kentucky because he loves Coach Cal, and he also thought that being in a basketball school was fun, among other reasons, right? And that's dope. But then you might have a guy like Caleb Love who's like, I don't care about Michigan's a football school. I'll go there and be their basketball star, right? And I'll go there and play for Juwan Howard, who's a bit of a joke of a coach, right? There are different mindsets and different viewpoints. Everybody's a different person. Different. Yep. Everybody is different. Every person is different. Every decision making process. Like, for instance, Dalton Connect, right? Decides to go to one of the slowest paced teams in the country as a guy that shot 35% from three last year and had so many dunks and played in a fast-paced offense.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to go to a place that already has wings and already has people returning from the team last year that was a Sweet 16 team.
Right.
And he's going to have to share minutes, and not a single person played more than 29 minutes per game last year on that roster.
Look,
so some decision makings, some processes of
debatable.
decision making are very sus. Okay, just sus. And so again, if IU misses on a recruit who has sus decision making, am I necessarily heartbroken? Yes, but will I cope later on and say that IU didn't miss because it was stupid decision making?
Of course,
absolutely.
That's how we roll. That's how it works here. I'm going to make one more comment here about Mike Woodson's transfer portal strategy in a moment. But first, it's time for our social media shout out. And we're going to tip our cap to the Hoosiers, who are about to proceed with the stressful, tense, anxious process of getting their name called in the NFL draft. IU, Tom Allen, and then going back to the Kevin Wilson era, Indiana's trying to extend their streak of getting an NFL draft selection to 10 years. It started back in 2014. The name I think you would most likely hear this weekend is Cam Jones, Indiana superstar linebacker. It's possible you hear Tywan Mullen, Luke Haggard as well. So keep an eye out, folks, as the Hoosiers will try to keep that streak going to a 10th season. Of course, they're riding some good news here out of the most recent commitment in the transfer portal that we talked about earlier from TCU. All in all, Indiana football trending in the right direction after a solid spring practice. Curious to see who they play at QB1 once the fall kicks off. Of course, looking at the NBA side, lots to discuss as far as the Hoosiers are concerned. Eric Gordon was a key factor for the LA Clippers in their first round series against Phoenix. We all saw the difficult news on Victor Oladipo and his knee injury. We hope that Victor can come back as soon as possible. I know Mike Woodson's talked about having previous connections to the program back in the building, talking to his team. Victor Oladipo, I think, would be an awesome person to have talk to his Indiana basketball team during the summer at some point, even if it's for 10 minutes, because Oladipo's got a lot that he can talk about as far as his basketball career is concerned. So best wishes for Victor Oladipo here in his recovery process going into this upcoming season. It's going to be a long road ahead after a torn patellar tendon. But folks, as far as we're concerned, our social media channels, make sure you join the club if you haven't already. We're at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
Exactly. You can find us there. Numbers are growing on a consistent basis. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. I think we just cracked 8,600 or so on Twitter. Let's help us get to 10K here, folks. Let's do it before the start of football season. That would be just awesome if we could make that happen. Also, if you haven't already, follow Matt, MD Lukens 101. He is hilarious and also very insightful. So it's the best of both worlds. You can't really go wrong as far as Matt's Twitter account there, MD Lukens 101. If you follow him, if you have not already, all sorts of fun stuff coming out of there. Also, very depressing Arsenal tweets, if that's what you're into as well. Anyway, folks, look, the Hoosiers now look ahead into this upcoming campaign. Lots to digest, lots to discuss. For me, I was saying there's one more point I wanted to make about Mike Woodson in the portal, and that is you may not even hear any commitments for a few more weeks. Why is that? Well, the NBA Combine is coming up in mid-May. And that's usually a process where players go through, and we've said this on the podcast before, players go through, and I think I saw an update like 280 players or something are early entrants into the NBA draft. You know what that means? That means about 220 of them, maybe even 240 of them, 250 of them aren't going to get drafted. Okay?
Yeah.
250 of them are not going to get drafted.
Yeah.
So what are they going to say? They're going to say, all right, well, shoot. We're not in the NBA draft. But, is it in my best interest to go back to the school that didn't prepare me enough for the NBA draft? Well, maybe. In a lot of cases, they'll go back to where they played. But
Right.
in a lot of other instances, they're going to be like, no, like, look, I mean, I'll try my best, maybe go the undrafted route and try to latch on here in a two-way contract, something like that, or maybe play overseas. But a lot of others will say, look, I'm going to go to a different school, get that NIL money, and find a different role where I can grow my game. And, maybe they played at a school where their responsibility was to catch and shoot three-pointers. Well, the NBA scouts will come back and say, hey, I need to see you do more ball handling. I need to see you do more rebounding. I need to see you do more on defense. Well, all of a sudden you go, well, maybe that school where I was a spot-up three-point shooter, maybe at a school like Gonzaga or Duke or something where I had one specific responsibility. Instead, now I need to go somewhere else where I can maximize a different part of my game. That's exactly why you need 2 roster spots open. I would be surprised, honestly, Matt, if Indiana got multiple commitments before the NBA Combine. Maybe 1. I don't think 2 or more will happen.
No, I would honestly be mad if IU got more than 2 commitments, right? Like a commitment, fine.
Sure, understand. You got 3 spots. Fill up 1.
You got 3 spots, you can fill up 1, but you got 2, and they have already, and people I've talked to have already said that they are planning on banking a scholarship, right? So if they fill out the roster before,
right,
the end of the
NBA Combine, the draft process, right,
and the draft process, you're missing out on a boatload of guys.
Crazy,
right?
Yeah.
And so again, I know a lot of people I've seen be like use the projections from last year on the portal. This is different. This is entirely different. We had last year was the first year of the portal craziness, and people didn't know how to act. People now kind of understand how this works.
Yes.
And they've seen people be able to UConn build a team almost overnight. That can go and win a national championship, right? Or Miami, right? Build a team overnight using NIL and the transfer portal to have a highly competitive team that goes on to do fantastic things in the NCAA tournament late on in the subsequent season.
Right.
And so now, like I said, everybody is waiting for Hunter Dickinson. Literally, everybody in the country is waiting on.
Yeah, and then you know what's going to happen?
Because there has not been a ton of transfers that caliber of Hunter Dickinson.
No, and then they're going to be
one of the 10 best players in the country next year.
And then there are going to be 2 more guys after Hunter Dickinson. Right?
Yep.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to compound.
Then who's the next best guy?
1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16.
And then you wake up and the NBA Combine's underway in mid-May, Chicago.
Yep.
Like, I would be surprised.
And then how many of those guys are going there? So what there's a list of what? 3 was it 300 400 guys?
I think it was like 280. Yeah, I think that was the number.
Yeah, it was almost 300. Right? Yeah, it's almost 300 guys in the NBA draft. There are 60 freaking picks in the draft, plus like
whatever, 10, 20 undrafted players. You want to go?
No, there's more than 10 or 20 undrafted players, but I mean, like,
but who actually end up like becoming something?
Oh yeah, there's like maybe 10.
Yeah,
right. Undrafted guys out of 280 people. Like that's at least 150 plus
that's
people
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Coming back to college basketball. And then what are the percentage of those guys who, by the way, are getting looked at by the NBA draft that decide to transfer? Probably like 20%.
There's going to be a chunk. Yeah, there's going to be a big chunk that go out and say, look, we got to go somewhere else.
If 150 guys return, 20% of 150 guys, by the way, math is 30.
Nice.
Right? So that's 30 high-level transfers being added back into the portal at the end of the draft process, right? Yeah. Somebody like a Devoe Davis, right? So IU like waiting on this is a good thing. Now, the problem is with this kind of strategy, you are legitimately competing against the big boys, right? You had the heavy hitters in the transfer portal, not necessarily the big boys. Now you're going to be competing against everybody because now people will be willing to over recruit for these NBA caliber guys.
Yeah.
But the good news is IU offers people shots and not having to be a playmaker and to be able to play off the ball and to play around a shot blocking unicorn type big, right? It's a good situation for people who want and need shots and need to show their shot making ability. And that is a rare spot to be in right now. In the NCAA, because there's a lot of people who are looking for guys that can be ball handlers. Like, for instance, Jaden Akins is in the draft for Michigan State, and I know I'm about to get myself in trouble somehow, but I don't care. He's a guy that's going to go to the draft, and they're going to be like, "Hey, last year you played almost entirely off ball." Right, almost entirely. Like most of your looks were spot up shooting for Michigan State. Right, you came off the bench. We want to see what you could do handling the ball because you were an absolute terrifying tornado when you have the ball. Like, you are elite with the ball in your hands, but you play on a team where you have two already pretty ball dominant guards, right, ahead of you in the rotation. We would recommend that you go and not just they wouldn't say find a place that gives you the ball, but, ask for the ball or get yourself into a situation in which you will get the ball more. Right. So, for instance, there are going to be guys like that will decide to stay in the program and decide to try to work it out within that program, or will take that advice and go, you know what, I don't think that's going to work out for me next year. I need to leave. Right. And it could be some people that are very surprising to you. And that you wouldn't, think would do that. So, again, IU waiting is a good thing. It's a good thing overall. Is it nerve-wracking? Yes, because there is always the chance that IU gets passed up.
Yeah, sure.
Like the last pick, like the extra person in a pickup game. There's always the chance that IU gets, is the last pick for everybody. And then IU is stuck with the roster they have right now, but that's not going to be the case. Okay, it's just not going to be the case. I know it's worst case scenario, and everybody's a little bit nervous about that. IU will figure it out. Okay, IU will have an extremely competitive team next year, fielded with a bunch of veteran guys in the wing position. They're going to get two of them. Who they are, we don't know yet, because there's still
it almost doesn't
so
matter.
Much stuff yet to happen.
Like, it almost doesn't matter who the player is. It's almost like the NFL draft coming up. It's almost like you just need the position. You just need like a D1 caliber player at that position.
We need a body.
Indiana's going to get to like a D1 caliber, right? That's it, and you're good to go. And it's funny that you were saying, that everyone could pass up Indiana, but then we have to go to our copium, right? Which is it's all just terrible decisions by all the players who are going through that process. So it's all their fault. If they don't want to come and play for Indiana. But as you said, Matt, like, Indiana does, as we said at the start, have their core. And we know who the core is, right? Even if Indiana goes out and adds a couple players, maybe they add one piece to the core. That would be great. But at the end of the day, it's Xavier Johnson, it's Trey Galloway, it's Malik Renew, and it's Kalel Ware. To start off, Matt, do you see those four guys right now starting on opening night? And then who do you think takes that fifth spot?
Oh. The transfer. Yeah,
I agree. I actually think, we're on the same page here. I don't think the fifth starter is on Indiana's roster right now.
No, definitely not. I honestly think it might be Trey Galloway off the bench. Or Malik Renew off the bench. One of those two guys is coming off the bench, because I think IU's getting two starters in the portal. I don't know who they are. I don't know where they're
and again, you don't know when they'll come. Right? This might be a June 30th situation.
Guys, literally IU could get a transfer tomorrow, right? Sure. Like, they could end up getting Trey White from USC. He could end up committing tomorrow, having not even visited, right? Like, this is how the way things work. Like, I don't know. And it's kind of fun, but also kind of really nerve-wracking. And I know you guys listen to the podcast like wanting to hear something, but we're all in the same boat together here, guys. We're all sitting here like, it'll happen when it happens.
Yeah, and now just to clarify, folks, there is like the 60-day. It is basically the 60-day transfer window that sort of opened up right after Selection Sunday. It'll close, basically right around NBA Combine time. So there won't be any commitments going into like June or anything like that. But you'll see the movement happen again at some point. Right? We just don't know when it is. And again, both of us, Matt and I, both feel like Indiana could patiently play their game here. It's not like they got to fill them up overnight.
Those windows don't matter. Like, it doesn't really matter. There will be commitments.
There you go.
But they won't be official commitments until June, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this process. The NCAA is trying to find that sweet spot as far as the rules and the enforcement, as far as the portal is concerned. That's where we're at. For me, I think Johnson, Galloway, Renew, and Ware all start. I think Indiana brings in a transfer who will also start for the Hoosiers on opening night. And then it'll be fascinating to see how the bench minutes get broken out, because I'm especially looking at Indiana's freshmen from last year in Gunn and Banks. What kind of role will they play on this team? Maybe Caleb Banks and CJ Gunn aren't ready to start just yet. We don't know what kind of work they're going to put in the summer. And then we don't know how valuable they will be from a positional standpoint going into this upcoming season. I think it's going to be a really fascinating storyline to track. But hey, it's only April 26th. There's a lot to decide between now and the start of the season. Matt, let's wind down here on this Wednesday night. Your final thoughts here. Xavier Johnson is back at Indiana. Huge news for the Hoosiers getting their starting combo guard in the fold.
Yeah, I mean, again, IU's best player next year is on the roster, right? And that's good. Of course, I mean, like, that's just the understatement of the century. IU's best player next year is back on the roster. That's good. Headline that.
Blow it up. I love it.
Very excited to see what the portal holds. Very happy that IU is not in the position of a lot of other teams in college basketball that are, still stuck with tons of questions as far as multiple starting lineup spots go. Like I said, IU probably has 2 coming in, but they could probably, live with only getting 1, right? Which is nice place to be at. And yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by the development players are going to make this summer. Especially, I think people really underestimate Trey Galloway's constant development, and CJ Gunn's. I think those are 2 guys that are primed for just surprising people. Ant saw 5 minutes of CJ Gunn play and was blown away early last year, to the point he put him in his freshman to watch list. And of course, we saw CJ Gunn go on to shoot 8% from 3. And not play a ton, but when he did play, he gave a ton of effort, and it was really noticeable, right? Him and Caleb Banks, and these are guys that are, again, still on the roster and are going to be in the lab all summer. So look out for those guys.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. By the way, my final thought here essentially is trust Mike Woodson. Like, I think he's gotten some flack recently for getting his knee operated on. Like, what are we doing? Like, what?
Ant had an interesting point on this.
Yeah.
On one point, yes, you have to understand that your coach, who is elderly, needs to get knee surgery. Sure. However, is there a worse time for you to have knee surgery?
Yeah,
is
Purdue week, or a Big Ten tournament week? Yeah, yeah.
Right?
I mean,
yeah. There's timing, and then there was that timing. Sure. Like, that kind of screwed IU in both of those recruitments, and both those guys are some of the best transfers.
No, and I understand. Here's what I'm going to say to that, though. Indiana right now, out of the 355 Division I basketball teams, Indiana's a top 10 transfer portal class.
Yeah, I
Right?
know.
Like,
They're fine. Yeah.
like, you know, whatever you want to say about Indiana's offseason, the 2 transfers they have brought in are literally symbolizing a top 10 recruiting class in college basketball.
Yeah.
When you just consider transfers who are incoming to their program, to their new program.
Yeah, I think people actually don't know.
If Indiana has a barren land, you know, where Indiana is unable to get anyone, that's a different story. But Peyton Sparks and Kalel Ware were 2 of the most coveted players this offseason.
Peyton Sparks is really, really good. And I'm people don't understand.
No, they
this.
don't.
He's so freakishly athletic for a guy that played in the MAC. Okay.
It's crazy.
He's gonna fit in right in athletically in the Big Ten. If not, he's gonna stand out. And that's our backup big.
Yeah. And by the way, the only 2 schools who have done better than Indiana in the portal in the Big Ten are Penn State and Wisconsin. You know,
also
Penn State, by the way, is completely renovating their roster. So they're going to have really good transfers coming in.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's the only one. And Wisconsin, tip your cap. Badgers know what they have to do in order to get back into the NCAA tournament. But for the Hoosiers,
they're going to be good next year.
Yeah, and it's good. I want more good teams in the Big Ten. The thing is, like, it's one of those things where you don't have to walk on eggshells about Mike Woodson anymore. If you want to find something to criticize, don't look at Mike Woodson. You know, look elsewhere, right? Yeah. For a lot of fans, look within yourselves, because I wouldn't be surprised if some of the comments that you're seeing on social media are off-putting to recruits who are considering the Indiana basketball program.
Okay. So, One last thing. Sorry to interrupt.
You're good. That's all I had. Yeah.
One last thing.
Yeah.
For those of you that listen to the podcast the whole way through, one, I appreciate you.
Ooh,
shout out to you guys.
Let's go.
But here is your little cookie at the end.
Yeah.
This is your payoff for listening to the whole thing. Do not be surprised if people that are already committed as transfers to teams don't get the NIL promise that they got to go to that university and end up back in the portal. And I'm not talking about people from Tennessee. That's it.
Well, there you go, folks. Just think about that. That about wraps it up for our 296th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find them all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation. We will see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.